here at the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Co with our good friend Doug Prey. And Doug, every time we're here, it just blows my mind. And this thing here is stunning, gorgeous, magnificent.
Yeah.
There's not just anything like that. It just, wow.
This is what started, this particular car is what started the incredible artistic design work in the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Company. This particular body style, which is called a speedster, which speedsters are the ones with the boat tail, the pointed rear boat tail, like a race car, built for speed. This one was built in 1929. They only built this car for 2 years, 28 and 29. They built it in all body styles. You could buy it in a sedan, you could buy it in a cabriolet, you could buy it in a speedster form. This was not the biggest seller because it doesn't even have roll-up windows, and it's got an emergency top with it. When somebody could buy a family car with roll-up windows, that's usually what they would buy. But the playboys of the day would buy this type car. There's one that we just recently restored that is very similar to this, except it's a longer wheelbase, and it belonged to a famous boxer. And I think you've even done
we've done a video on it as well.
It belonged to a famous boxer of the day that got in all kinds of trouble in that car. But this is a 1929. It's a model 890. And 890 means it was 8-cylinder, 90 horsepower. The 28 version would be called an 888. 8-cylinder, 88 horsepower. They changed the carburetor, gave it a couple more horsepower, changed the name. The cars are essentially the same in 28, 29. In 30, they dropped the Speedster, and you could still buy a sedan or a cabriolet or a Phaeton, but you couldn't buy a Speedster in 30. So 28, 29, this exists. This car is one of the most beautifully designed cars in the world. And this also influenced the 31 through 33 Speedster design, which influenced the 35, 36 Speedster design. So this is first of the 3 generations that Auburn built in the Boat Tail Speedster.
And you think about 1928, 29, that was literally the Model A.
Oh yeah.
So that was the Model A era, that was the normal car. And you look at this car compared to a Model A, obviously this was much more expensive, but obviously extravagant and not your typical family sedan compared to a Ford Model A.
Well, yeah, and that's just, what, 2 years away from Model T.
Yeah, I mean, right, yeah, just around the corner from Model T.
But in restoring this car, they're it's just a step above.
Yeah, it's a little more of a challenge.
A step above a Model T. It's very horse and buggy days, but the craftsmanship was unbelievable.
And you've recently finished this car.
Yeah,
right?
this car was finished last summer is when it was finished, and it's being shown. It was my car, and I sold it to a friend of mine, and it was shown at Auburn and got a first at Auburn, and then it's gone to the AACA Nationals in Hershey, and it got a first there. It's getting ready to go to a couple more AACA events, Antique Automobile Club of America national events, and be shown. And then he talked about he's got his eyes set on a later model one, and so he said maybe next year he may put this one up for sale. But 28, 29 Speedster, this one is called a small 8. I don't know if I've talked about the nuances between this and the big 8. Big 8, same body, same fenders, but it has a bigger engine in it that's longer. And instead of having 90 horsepower, it has 120 horsepower. And they lengthened the hood and lengthened the running boards. Everything else is the same. So the car looks the same. I kind of like the look of the shorter version, shorter wheelbase. But it's whatever you want. One's not necessarily any more valuable than the other. But somebody, might say, oh, I got a big 8 and you've got a small 8.
But the crazy thing to think about is 90 and 120 horsepower today doesn't sound like much at all.
Yeah.
In 1928, 29, compared to a lot of cars with 30 or 40 horsepower,
right,
that was crazy.
Well, what was interesting when I started studying these, when you look, we've got the original archives, original parts manuals. They made 4 different rear end ratios for these. And so one of them is what we call a stump puller. You don't even want it because top speed is about 40 miles an hour. If you need to climb hills or pull stumps,
it's great.
It's great. But they put them in the parts manual as low, medium, and high. And then they had one that said Speedster. So they actually had 4. So if you had the low one, you're a 45-mile-an-hour car. If you've got the high one, you're a 70-mile-an-hour car. But they said when you put the Speedster rear end in it, this was guaranteed to do 88 miles an hour. So this is an 88-mile-an-hour car, which kind of helps with their Model 888.
Right.
88 horsepower, 88 miles an hour, Speedster. This was just for the guy who wanted to play.
Yeah.
This is the sports car of the day. The craftsmanship and
the design is just
incredible
amazing.
design. I mean, everything, but the simplicity too. I mean, look how simple just the bumper is, you know. But we do everything when we restore a car to go back to originality. It's even like the little brackets that hold this on, they say ball crank in them. I assume that's who manufactured them. Well, that's still there. The radiator core is the front of the radiator. Now they do make an accessory shield, a bug shield, that we don't have on this car. We may put one on it that really kind of flashes that up, but that's the way it was born. And then different little nuances, such as the headlights on this are black instead of chrome, but you could get them either way. And so these are black, and they really look good in black. And in fact, I like them, I think, as well as I do the chrome. This is really special. This is not the hood ornament that the car would have been born with, but it was an accessory that was offered in 1929, and this is a 1929 car. Lalique, famous artist, Lalique Crystal is still in business in France. That's cast crystal made in France. And she was designed for the 29 Auburn. Now, Lalique made them for different cars. He designed them for Cord, for Packard, for Chrysler, and I think there's about 20 different Lalique hood ornaments that are out there, and they're very collectible. I've got one just sitting on my desk, and they light up from the bottom, and she glows, and that's probably has more pictures taken of that flying lady than any other hood ornament I've ever seen in my life. So that was an accessory. It's actually a beautiful addition to this car that shows it off. But everything from the V'd windshield, but the crudeness, like where do you put windshield wipers? They're usually inside the car. They didn't have a place to put them, so they just stick them right outside on the windshield wipers. The driving lights, so you've got extra lights on the side, or parking lights. The way the spare tires are held on, just, you know, the cars were just incredibly beautiful. You see on this side, the door's not on it. When we're servicing or working, the door literally, you can open it, lift it up, take it off, and then we can get in it to work or service it. And we were putting a new battery in this one, so the seat's out of it. You can see how simple the dash is, but really beautiful. And if you can get a close-up of the dash, you can see the intricacy of the design work and the pinstriping on the dash. All that's original and correct to this car. And then the controls are on the steering wheel. You can control the spark, you can control the throttle, all right there from your steering wheel. And so the top, they call it emergency top. It's inside the golf bag door. It's got a golf bag door on each side. There's no trunk, except it is a trunk. If it'll fit through that hole, you can put it in there. So your golf bags will fit in there. The top, simply, this just pops up and locks, and then you take your emergency top out and snap it on, and you can keep the rain off of you. When we go to shows, when they're judged, we always have the top up, and as soon as they judge it, we take the top down, because the cars were really designed with the top down, and I think they're more beautiful with the top down. But for showing, we'll put the top up and then take it down. Everything from, look at the wire wheels. You know, those are just a black wire wheel with the chrome ring and stainless spokes, and I think they're beautiful. People like all chrome wheels, which you could have done on this as an accessory, but I kind of like that look, which is pretty incredible. Two-tone paint, and some of them were even three-tone that had different paint schemes. This is a very unique original colors. The dark blue with the gray would have been very period correct. Metallics, were just starting to come out then. This one is not metallic, but it really looks good in the gray. People just, it's not a color you think you'd pick, but I don't think I've ever seen anything more beautiful than that two-tone blue and gray. Everything down to originality on this car. You know, the little double bumper. These I've seen on other cars, and they do them in wood. They look like wood slats. I've looked in the parts manuals and have never seen wood as it was actually done. They're all metal, and each one is a different length, so you think it's just easy to attach them. People say, why did they do that? I think why they did it is they were building all the other cars as sedans and decided to build a Speedster. And when they built the Speedster, there's that big gap there, and they go, what the heck do we do with it?
We got to put something there.
So they just filled it up with those slats, and which looks neat, but I kind of think it was an afterthought. You know, what do you do? These cars were hand built, and I've never seen two of them that are exactly alike. There was actually two different body build companies that built these bodies, and Central Manufacturing was one. This was the second one that was. The second body company built this car, and most of your viewers probably know, but the whole inside of this car is all wood. So it's a complete wood body with the steel shell put over the top of it, as is, you know, all the cars from this area. People think, well, they're just all steel, and they are, but the whole understructure is wood.
And that's a lot of work when you look at this boat tail design, how it flows back to this point. All that structure's got to be just right, or the metal's wonky and it doesn't sit right, and that's amazing craftsmanship to make that happen.
It is amazing craftsmanship, but when you know, when we're restoring these cars, say we'll be working on a right fender, and then we got to match the left fender to it, and go, oh, the left fender is 2 inches bigger than the right fender, and that's the way it came from the factory.
Those were the original fenders.
Well, we try to make them the same and right, so it really gets real complicated to restore to this quality, because they weren't that high of quality when they were built. The overall look was still the same, but it gets really complicated. Like my father used to say, I mean, as a kid, I said, well, why is that fender 2 inches different than this fender? And he goes, the guy on the right side of the assembly line wasn't talking to the guy on the left side of the assembly line. You know, I mean, who knows? But they were hand built, and with all the craftsmanship and the design and the engineering, there's a lot of crudeness. I mean, think this car now, almost 100 years old.
Yeah, really, 95 years old.
Yeah.
So it's pushing 100 years old.
Almost 100 years. Yeah, almost 100 years. So they had it pretty good back then.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They had it pretty good back then. But this car, again, is going to a show here in a few weeks to be shown off at the AACA Nationals. It will probably go to Auburn next year, and it'll go for probably a senior first place. And then at that point, he's thinking about another car, and he may put it up for sale. I tell him, I said, the problem is if you sell it and you miss it, where are you going to buy another one? I mean,
that's a good point.
There's not.
You don't get out of the car lot and pick one of these up.
There's not very many of these out there, and when they do show up, they bring a lot of money. I think the last one, Small 8, that sold just 6 months ago, brought $500,000. And I still think these are underpriced, because if you move to the 32 through 33, and especially in the V12, they're worth $1.5 million.
Yeah. And
it's essentially the same design. For some reason, these are a little underpriced. You move to the 35, 36 supercharged version, they're $800,000 to $1.5 million. And then this is at $500,000, and some of them are less, depending on the quality and the condition. And so I think this is a car that if somebody spent $500,000 on, 5 years from now, it's going to be $1 million.
Would be a good one to think about, a good investment.
But yeah, what a beautiful car. Now, one thing that I do warn people about is apparently people were a lot smaller back then. Yeah. I can drive this car. I'm 6'1", and I got a pretty big belly, but I can drive it, and I'm pretty squeezed in there.
Yeah.
they didn't make him real roomy. Such a big car with not a whole lot of room, and the seat doesn't adjust. So what it is,
That's what you got.
great big steering wheel, and what you've got's what you've got. And I do fit in it, but if you're 5'10" and you don't have a belly on you, it's probably pretty comfortable. You would be comfortable.
I'd be comfortable.
You'd be comfortable in there, but a little uncomfortable for me. But anyway, that's it. That's a fantastic example of a 28, 29 Speedster done right, and so I hope your people seeing it enjoy it. If they have any questions or anything about Auburns or Speedsters, we've got the information, we've got the answers.
That's why you're here. That's why you're the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Company.
Yeah, and we'd have all the original. I remember this factory built this car originally in the 1920s, and I've been going through all our archives here lately and been sorting out technical information way back from the 20s all the way through. In fact, I'll probably show you here pretty soon all
That'd be cool.
technical information that I've found from 20. Well, I've got it even pre-28, and we'll talk about that in another segment about the information. But we've got parts in this building from 28 through 37, and we don't have anything pre-28. And there's a story behind that. Because they built a lot of cars in the early 20s. Auburn was established in 1900.
That's right.
But there's no parts for anything from 1900 to 27. So anyway, that's another story.
We'll have to get into that another time. So, well, thanks for sharing this one with us. This thing it's stunning, and look forward to see how it goes for its senior award next. Correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So, well, thanks for watching, everybody. We hope you enjoy the Auburn. Like I said, every time we come to see Doug, we see cool stuff, and we learn a ton of information about these cars that are almost 100 years old that most people don't have an opportunity to see or learn about yet. You do share that with us. So, Doug, we thank you. We appreciate your time. And let's go check out a few more things and see what else you got going on.
All right. Thanks. It's a lot of fun.